Rabbeisai, we're back. Techeiles Have, Koil, Chashiv Koil, Harish Koil. All right, so let's get rolling. Techeiles, I got a lot of requests lately for Techeiles, so I guess it was time. Came in. Okay, so let's go. So there's something that I found very interesting in this sugya of Techeiles. For those, the proponents of Techeiles, the ones who are into Techeiles, they find a very emotional sugya. Everybody's very emotional about it. For those that are anti-Techeiles, also a very emotional sugya. People are I don't know what it is exactly. Yeah. When it comes to like, do you wear Rabbeinu Tam tefillin? Maybe yeah, maybe not. Niputz l'shma? Maybe yeah, maybe not. When it comes to, how, Sefer Torah standing, laying, whatever, When it comes to this sugya, of whether you need Techeiles or you don't need Techeiles, whether it's the right Techeiles or it's the wrong Techeiles, very emotional. And I feel like it's very interesting. There's a lot of Talmidei Chacham that I heard what they have to say on it, who I generally respect their opinions very much, who I felt, were pushing their side in even a illogical fashion. So I was very surprised. So let's go. Yeah, I'm going to go for the tack. Don't worry. Okay. So I'm not sure. I really don't know what the pshat is. I think maybe since it's a relatively new sheila and people don't have a long-standing misura about it, therefore they feel like it's like theirs for the grabbing and they get very emotionally involved. That's my theory, but I don't really know.
You don't really know. I know the word
yeah. So, fine. So let's get started. So, first of all, there's a debate in general whether tzitzis and Techeiles is two separate independent mitzvahs or is it one single mitzvah. L'maisa, we go with the fact that it's one mitzvah for the most part. Now there's a machlokes tanoim if you do not have is Techeiles ma'akiv the mitzvah of tzitzis, meaning if you don't have Techeiles, so you're still able to be mekayim in the mitzvah of tzitzis.
That only makes sense if it's one mitzvah.
Which is only going to be within the tzad of it being one mitzvah, which is how we're going to pretty much go. But just because you hold it's one mitzvah does not mean that it's ma'akiv. So l'maisa, right poskim go with the concept that they are not ma'akiv each other, and you could be mekayim in the mitzvah of tzitzis even without being mekayim. So there is one place, the Baal Ma'or. The Baal Ma'or says that if you don't have Techeiles, you're not yoytz in the mitzvah of tzitzis. L'chayra, the Baal Ma'or didn't wear tzitzis. L'chayra. Because the Baal Ma'or says it is ma'akiv. And some people say that is actually apparently one of the reasons that the briskers don't wear tzitzis. I don't fully understand every nikud of this, but not wearing tzitzis on Shabbos because for it to be batal to the guf in order for it not to be carrying, apparently, I'm not saying I fully understand every nikud of this, but apparently it has to be the chol hashitas that you're yoytze the din tzitzis. But since the Baal Ma'or you're not yoytze the din tzitzis, therefore it's not going to be batal to your guf and therefore potentially carrying. I just said over the basics. I'm not saying I am ready to fully understand that, but that's apparently their shita. Okay, so let's get a little history before we take the boxing gloves and start duking this out. So a little history. So it seems that they had Techeiles through the Zman Tanoim, through the Zman Amoraim, the Rabbanan Savroi, which are right after the Amoraim. It looks like maybe in the beginning of the Rabbanan Savroi, but seemingly they had it, and then it was lost.
Some say it was the Arab conquest in 723.
Yes, so we'll see the theories. I'm going to get to that in a second. So they're 723. I didn't know that exact year, but great. So, and then sometimes it was lost. Seemingly, a lot of people say it was in the 7th century, maybe the 6th, maybe the 7th, maybe even the beginning of the 8th century that it was lost, probably in the 7th century. Now, why was it lost? So perhaps the Arab conquest, or many wrote is also that there was a different kufas in history when the Romans banned the use of red dye, of blue and purple dyes. And when the Romans banned the use, it's only for royalty. So therefore, it became pikuach nefesh for us to use the blue dye. Once it became pikuach nefesh for us to use the blue dye, we're not going to use it. We're not going to use Techeiles when it's pikuach nefesh. So once we stopped using it, in Mela, it got lost. So that is the other theory And that's I think, the more prominent theory as to when Techeiles was lost. Now, the Medrash Rabbah and the Medrash Tanchuma both say that it was Nignaz at this point. Now, we don't know when exactly that point when it was Nignaz, and we're going to see there's going to be some debate what that word Nignaz even means. But the Medrash Rabbah, the Medrash Tanchuma, and this is probably in the early sometime in the 7th century that this was written, that it was Nignaz. Now, this Techeiles point was a dead issue for 1300 years. It was a dead issue because it was Nignaz, it was gone, it was missing, we didn't have it, and there's nothing to talk about. There's no sugya because usually when something's completely irrelevant, the poskim don't discuss it so much. No, it is Nignaz. It didn't say it was Nignaz today. It just mentions it as being Nignaz. I don't think there's a mashmois that it was Nignaz right then. So in theory, from the Medrash, it doesn't prove that it didn't happen 400 years earlier. It could have, in theory, happened 400 years earlier from the Medrash, or it could have happened 30 years earlier. We just don't know from the wording of the Medrash. We just know at the time of the Medrash, it was Nignaz. Okay. Now, this was a dead issue until 1887. In 1887, there was a big goyin, a tzaddik, somebody who had a Havas Mitzvahs, named the Regina Rebbe, Gershon Henoch Leiner, the Regina Rebbe, and he decided it's going to be his mission. He wants to try to find the missing Techeiles. Now, why Dafka this time in history? There was a new Chiddush, they were Mechadish, not so much earlier. They were Mechadish something called the aquarium. And in two places, one in England and another place in Naples, Italy, they built this massive aquarium. Now that aquarium, it was shaykh to go look through the aquarium and try to find the right fish. So he wrote three svarim on Techeiles. The first sefer he wrote before he ever even left to go find his Techeiles, and he writes something very interesting that people don't realize. In the Shita of the Regina, he says that any marine creature that we could get a liquid out of it that could be used to dye a wool blue, that will and the dye will last. It'll be blue and it will last. That will qualify as Techeiles. So he wasn't actually makbid on fulfilling every little nakuda of the Gemara. He said you count as a chilazon because I think he might have held there are some shitas, I forgot what it was called again, it's slipping my mind, that there's multiple types of chilazon. He was working with that shita, and therefore whatever I find, that's a chilazon, not a specific creature.
Yeah, it sounds like you need a chilazon though.
He needed a chilazon.
Right.
He needed a chilazon.
You don't even need, you just need blue.
But his definition of chilazon seems to be a general topic of types of fish as opposed to a specific type. Okay. So then he goes out looking. He spends around a year in the aquarium in Naples, Italy. I guess l'chayra, the Regina Rebbe got a season pass to the aquarium. L'chayra, he went with the season pass because he spent like a year there, and searching all the different fishes, and he came up with the cuttlefish. Now the cuttlefish shoots out some like ink, which is the cuttlefish is like a squid style type fish, and it shoots out this dark ink. And now the Regina had a problem though. He needed two things to happen with this ink that the cuttlefish was shooting out. He needed to get it the right color, and by the way, it wasn't a problem adding some stuff because as the Rambam and the Rush both say, that you're able to add samamam, you're able to add things to the mixture.
You see that in the Gemara in Nafas. They used to have a different.
They added stuff, correct. Though it's a little. Some people claim that Rashi holds you can't, but that's how that works with the Gemara and Mem Gimel, not for right this second. But there is some claim that Rashi doesn't allow the adding of the Samam, but it's definitely the Pashtus of the Gemara, and it's the Shitas, HaRambam, and the Rosh that you're able to add the Samamim. So the question is, how is he going to get this stuff to be bluish, and how is he going to get this ink from the cuttlefish to last on the wool? How is he going to get it to stick? So he got a Italian chemist to go help him with this mission, and the Italian chemist figured out how to make this ink from the cuttlefish bluish, and how to make it last on the wool. And he went and he made himself Techeiles, and he made Techeiles for approximately 12,000 other people. Also got this Techeiles and started wearing it. Who were these 12,000 people? They were primarily, number one, his Hasidim, and number two, there were a lot of Breslover Hasidim that took it on as well. Why? Because the Breslover Hasidim had some form of a Messiah that the following year, 1888, really the year that the Regina came back from Italy, they had a Messiah that year would be the Gula. Now what happened is, that year the Gula never happened in 1888. So they took it as a simim de shemayim, so to speak, a Messiah, that the Messiah must have been alluding to the Techeiles being revealed in 1888. And since the Regina came and revealed the Techeiles in 1888, so a lot of Breslover Chassidim at the time took on the Techeiles as that was the kiyum of their Messiah. And therefore they started wearing the Techeiles as well. Fine, old, nice. At a later point, this theory of the cuttlefish was seemingly disproved, or at least most hold that it was disproved, mostly by the most famous one who argued in it was Rav Herzog, the one who was the original chief rabbi. This is before he was the chief rabbi, but the one who ended up becoming the first chief rabbi of Israel. So Rav Kook. Rav Kook was before.
If it's Israel, you're right.
Israel. Rav Kook was before Palestine. So Rav Herzog, he pretty much proved that the Regina was seemingly duped by the Italian chemist, because the Italian chemist, the Samamamim, actually seemingly he put some form of blue dye or something that causes it to come blue in the mixture, meaning the blue color was not being generated by the cuttlefish, it was being generated from the add-ins. So that was deemed to be a problem, and therefore that the cuttlefish was pretty much rejected by almost everyone, and therefore no more cuttlefish. The Reb Herzog then gave two suggestions of possible two suggestions of possible replacements of what could be the chilazon for the Techeiles, and the first one, the gelatina or something like that. So the problem with that one though was he couldn't figure out how to get the dye to last on the wool. The dye just washed out, and therefore there's a Gemara Menachos that says it's supposed to last, and if it doesn't last, so seemingly that was a problem. He also found the Murex, truculos, which I'm going to for now just call it Murex for now because that's easier. So that he also found that, but he had a couple of issues. First of all, the ink was purplish, not bluish, and he was looking for bluish. Second, he couldn't figure out how to get it to stick well to the wool. The third issue that he had was that it says Gufay Kiyam, the Gemara describing the characteristics of the chilazon. It says its body is like the water, seemingly, and you would expect something blue, whereas the Murex had this whitish, brownish, sandyish type of color, and that we'll get there, and therefore it doesn't look like the water. So that was Rav Herzog's next taina. And then the fourth issue was that the chilazon was supposed to come up once every 70 years. And we don't find such a phenomenon by the Murex that it just shows up once every 70 years. So therefore he thought the Murex has a good shot, so to speak, but he had some questions which are left unanswered. Okay, so now time goes on, this now stayed a pretty dead issue for 60, 70 years or whatever of a dead issue because, we kind of got rid of the cuttlefish. We didn't really find the proper replacement. Comes, let's say, late 80s, early 90s, Techeiles opens up this institute, and they say, we found the Techeiles. It's the Murex. What about Rav Herzog's questions? We have answers to Rav Herzog's question. The most dramatic one, the most important one that they found the answer to was the biggest problem that Rav Herzog has was that it was a purplish color, not a bluish color. So they figured out that if you expose the ink, the dye of the Murex to the sun, instead of turning purple, it turns blue. And now they realize, wada, we have a way to make the blue ink. We'll discuss the specific little other points as we go on, but that was the main thing that they were mechadish, and they said, look, we found it. Now we have the chilazon. We can make Techeiles. Now, that was the basic history of how we got to here. Ever since then, there's been a tremendous amount of Torah written on this, from both camps, on both sides. There's svarm galore, how the Murex is the chilazon, is the Techeiles. And there's svarm galore, how the Murex is obviously not the Techeiles. So let's go through this. Let's start going through the rayas. We're going to first go with some of the rayas, the proofs that it is the Techeiles. Then I'm going to go through the basic Gemara that gives us simanim. Now the Gemara is going to give a couple characteristics. Those characteristics, both sides use this Gemara. The pro side uses that Gemara to say, the Gemara proves that the Murex is right. And the anti-camp uses the same exact Gemara to say on each point that proves that it's not the right thing. So let's go through the proofs and let's go with an open mind and see what we believe, because I think there's too much closed-mindedness on the sugya on both ends. So let's go through this. So the Gemara in Menachos, we're talking about Mem Beis and Beis and Dalam and Aleph, yeah? So it says that how do you get the dye to dye the Techeiles? It comes from the blood of the chilazon. So the archaeologists claim to have found in Eretz Yisrael a vat that held dyes from the Murex. So there was dyes that was from, they tested it, that it comes from the Murex, and they dated it back to 1200 BC. We're talking about 3,200 years ago. They dated it back. And see, they were using this Murex 3,200 years ago. It must be Techeiles. The anti-camp says, what type of raya is that? I mean, first of all, that doesn't prove they used it for Techeiles. All that proves is they had it around. Secondly, your whole dating system is worthless. I don't believe any of those things that the archaeologists date. Carbon dating and all that is one big fat scam. I have no idea. Maybe it's from 150 years ago. I don't know. I don't trust you. I have no idea how long ago it's from. And just because they had it, that doesn't prove anything about Techeiles. Okay, next raya. The Gemara in Shabbos says the chilazon is located on the coast between Haifa and Tzor. Now, I'm not sure where Tzor is, but somewhere over there, not so far from Haifa. Now, I found this to be pretty remarkable actually. So first of all, they have found the Murex off the coast of that exact place. In that area, they found lots of Murex off the coast. Secondly, they found 6 massive pits of cracked Murex shells, and it was cracked right at the place where you would crack it to take out the dye. So there were 6 massive pits of this Murex crack, and once again they dated those things back 2,000 years or whatever it is. So the pro camp wants to say, therefore you see very close to the beach they found these pits. Ancient pits with hundreds of thousands of Murex shells in there, where the Gemara says that's where the chilazon was found. So that seems like The pro camp is going to say this seems like a little too much of a coincidence to just say, oh, yeah, it happens to work out. Right where the Gemara says is where they caught the chilazon, that's where they have the Murex shells. Sounds a little too likely to be coincidence. And that is a pretty strong, much better than the previous raya. There's something seemingly there. But the anti-camp will argue very simply that yes, it's true they used to use this for dyes, and maybe they had blue shirts. Where do you see from the fact that they used the Murex, and even if they cracked it in the right place, and even if that's true, where do you see it's for Techeiles? How do I know? The Gemara could have said that's where some other species of snail used to be. Maybe that species is extinct for now. Or what do I know? That's not there anymore. And it happens to be. It's also where they got these Murex, which they use for blue shirts. So they had the chilazon for tzitzis, and then the Murex for blue shirts.
The Gemara should have said about just like the
We'll get. We first get doing the pro, and then we'll fine. Next, the Gemara discusses many yisurim that you're over for extracting the yisurim that how many yisurim you're over for extracting the chilazon on Shabbos. So hapatzeach chilazon, you crack it open. So we see that these murex need to be cracked open. So that seems to be some indication that we're dealing with the right thing. Anti-camp says, wait a second, shkoyach. So you need to crack it open. How does that prove that this is the chilazon, that this thing that you have to crack, there's a lot of things you have to crack open. You want to get to the middle of a turtle, crack that open. Just because any snail crack open. Just because you have to crack it open doesn't mean you found the right guy. Next raya. It says in Shiur that the chilazon has a nartik, a shell. And the Murex has the shell. And once again, it needs to be cracked open. Same thing. Shell doesn't prove much. Okay, fine. Next. The Gemara in Menachos Mem Gimel says the color of the Techeiles is the color of the yam, the sky, right? So it's the color of the sky. What color is the sky, seemingly? Sky is blue. What color dye did we figure out how to make from this Murex? Blue. Blue equals blue. This Murex makes a lot of sense. It's the right color. It's the color that the Gemara talks about. And the Gemara in Bamitzia says that I Hashem, who is able to differentiate between the zera of the Mitzri who's the firstborn and the Mitzri who's not the firstborn, meaning something that the regular people looking at can't tell. But I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who have the deeper ability to tell, I am going to pay back. I'm going to take retribution against those that wear the clay eloin, the tzitz is painted with clay eloin instead of Techeiles. Meaning there was some fake indigo, as the Aruch says. There was some fake out a dye called clay eloin that apparently could trick anybody into that it looks like Techeiles, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who doesn't fall for the tricks, but it seems like it was a pretty good trick to be able. So we see that Techeiles looks like this clay eloin. And what is clay eloin? So the Aruch and the Radbaz say the clay eloin is indigo. Indigo is blue. So the sky is blue, the clay eloin is blue, and the Murex is blue. So we're doing pretty well. This looks like a great match. And furthermore, and this is really cool, that the blue dye of the Murex has not only the same blue color as indigo, but it is the same molecular makeup as indigo. What does that mean? Those like chemistry charts that we never had to look at, which has the H and the B and the D and whatever. It's mamish the same thing, which is it's not just that it happens to be the same color. It's mamish the same molecular structure. It's mamish the same makeup. You look at the two, you put them both in a cup, you'll have no idea which one was which. It's mamish the same thing. And then we understand the Gemara makes perfect sense. I, Hashem, who could tell the difference between the zera of a Bechar and the zera not of a Bechar, I could tell the difference between Techeiles, the chilazon, and the clay elon. So I happen to find this one. I think was the most impressive proof for me personally. This I thought, No, when it's purple, it has a different molecular makeup. When the Techeiles when the Murex is purple, its molecular makeup is different. When you expose it to the sun, something goes away, and then the molecular makeup matches, which I thought was just apparently the likelihood of a sea creature and vegetation to produce the same molecular makeup is a big chiddush. It's not like it doesn't apply anywhere, but it's quite a chiddush. Fine. So that one I think was pretty good. Fine. Next. The Gemara Menachos Mem Gimel says that the dye is permanent of the chilazon. And the Rambam explains that the color won't change no matter what. Now the Murex is a very fast dye, and it's a very permanent dye. You could go and soak it in bleach, it won't come off. So it has that quality that the Gemara and the Rambam talk about. The anti will say that's not a proof, because, okay, fine, it doesn't wash off. Will you tell me that this Murex is the chilazon? Now, they found the image of the Murex on the Bar Kochva coins. Why would they put some not kosher dika animal on the Bar Kochva coins? It must be that it is Techeiles. Anti, I don't know, maybe once again, it seems that the royalty were using this stuff. The royalty were using blue and purple dyes, and once again, if you want to go with the archaeologists a little bit that we quoted before, they were using these dyes maybe for a long time ago, chashiv things, the Roman Aser. So maybe that just meant like chashivas, and that's what the kings did. So we put a symbol. It doesn't actually prove that it's Techeiles. Okay. They found a cloth dyed with Murex, a blue cloth dyed with Murex on Masada, and they dated it back to Bayesheni. So you see, they were using the Murex and dyeing blue. So that I didn't think is such a great taina, because okay, maybe they used it. And in fact, what did they find? They didn't find tzitzis. They didn't find Techeiles. They found the stam cloth. In fact, that raya might hurt them more than it helps them. It shows that the cloth that they were using wasn't Techeiles. They used it for a stam cloth. So now that in a way hurts them a little bit, because they were trying to say from the fact that they found it being used that it's for cloth, that it's Techeiles, and you see it being used not for Techeiles. So sorry on that one. The Ravya quotes the Yerushalmi, which identifies Techeiles with the Greek word pafraya. And apparently secular sources, Plimo the Elder and all the secular sources, friends, they tell us that pafraya in ancient Greek was referring to the Murex. So what does the anti-camp say? The anti-camp says that, wait a second, we don't rely on these secular. I don't care what Plimo the Elder says. Plimo the Elder is because he has a Messiah that he told some mamzer, who told some mukhshis, who told some reitzeach that's what it means. I don't care what he says. I don't care if he says that means Murex. And in fact, maybe that daf could fit in. Maybe because we had a word that was our Techeiles, our chilazon Techeiles, so he decided to stick it into the Murex dye because he thought it was a nice idea. It doesn't prove that that's the real meaning. Fine. The Romans made it illegal to use Murex around the time that Techeiles disappeared. Sounds like a little bit too much of a coincidence, no? At the time that the Murex disappeared, at the time that Techeiles disappeared, the Romans asked Murex. Sounds too convenient. Must be that the Murex was the Techeiles. Anti-camp will say, wait a second. First of all, it's not clear that the Romans only astered it at that time. The Romans seemingly might have started astering it beforehand. So it's not exactly a perfect time frame. Secondly, that the Romans very possibly, maybe they astered the real Techeiles, and they astered Murex as well. Once again, and it makes sense for the same reason. If you want to say the Murex makes purple and blue dyes, Techeiles makes blue dyes. They didn't only wanted the kings to use purple and blue dyes, so maybe just like they asked the Murex, maybe they asked the Techeiles as well. Oh, Plimo didn't tell you two things? I don't care what Plimo said. Yeah? Fine. They found Murex shells when they were excavating near the old city. So near the old city, when they're digging up in their excavations, the archaeologists, they found Murex shells. Must be Techeiles. Why else? What are they doing with these You think they had an aquarium over there? They had a fish tank? Yeah, Yeah. So, first of all, yeah, they used it for begadim. Who says because they used it, it was for Techeiles? Who knows what it was for? And second of all, I don't trust these archaeologists. Yeah, fine. No, the archaeologists in general are pretty bad. Yeah, fine. The Gemara warns against using clay elon. Right, number 13. Proof number 13. The Gemara warns against using clay elon instead of Techeiles. Right? If the Murex and the Murex wasn't if the Murex was around, right? We have all our proofs, archaeological proofs, etc. The Murex was around, right? And the Torah warns us not to use clay elon. If the Murex is so similar, which at least you have to be masculine at this point, it has some similarities to the Techeiles, right? So why in the world were we warned against not using clay elon? The Gemara warns us against using clay elon. It should have warned us against using the Murex. If the Murex wasn't the real Techeiles, must be the Murex is Techeiles, right? So the anti-camp will say, first of all, it's not conclusive that the Murex was around. Maybe yeah, maybe not. Not conclusive. Secondly, you have your Plimo. I don't care about Plimo again. So it's not conclusive it was around. But even if you want to say it was around, what was the whole chashash? The whole chashash was the guy is not going to spend the big money on Techeiles, and instead he's going to just he's going to make the strings blue with the cheap clay elon, the cheap plant-based stuff. It seems to be clear to everybody, and everybody's agreeing, this Murex was expensive stuff. Whether it was more expensive than Techeiles or less expensive than Techeiles, if you're the anti-camp, I don't know. But there's not a big chashash that you're going to go and use a fake out of really expensive Murex. The guy who's going to do the fake out is going to use the clay elon. And especially now you're telling me they're the same color, so there's no chashash that somebody's going to fake out and use the Murex. And therefore we only have to be warning against a clay elon fake out. There's no reason for the Gemara to warn against a Murex fake out.
That right is pretty, in my opinion, is irrefutable.
You like that, right?
Oh yeah, it's irrefutable. It's used for, but it's a very expensive thing. So the Gemara's chashash that people want to say, but they'll use the cheap thing.
Correct. And but Murex,
that's very strong.
fine.
It's not a riot, but it takes away that they don't have to.
Right, correct. Takes away their right. Correct. I agree. The Gemara on Shabbos Ayin Hey says the blood from the chilazon produces a better dye when it's extracted when the chilazon is alive. And apparently the Murex has some enzyme which is good for the dye. It makes the dye work better. And shortly after the Murex dies, that enzyme disappears and it's not as good of a dye. So you see, it's a perfect match. Anti-camp, that doesn't prove it's the chilazon. It might have similar qualities, but that doesn't prove it's the chilazon. Okay, now let's look at some of the Gemaras and Rishonim that are quoted to describe the chilazon, and let's see how it stacks up, and let's see if the Murex meets the test. And we're going to see in these examples, we're going to see both sides quote these examples as a raya. I'm going to present it at first from the anti-camp side, and then I'm going to defend it on the pro side. But they both use the same Gemaras to prove their points. So let's go. So the primary Gemara in describing the Techeiles is Menachos Mem Daled Mem Aleph. It lists 4 or 5, depending on how you count them, characteristics of the chilazon. It says like this. The chilazon, its gufay is doime liyam. Its body is comparable to the ocean. Its gufay is doime liyam. So in which way is it comparable? Zat Rashi in the color. It's the color of the ocean. So I want something that is blue. So the anti will ask Akasha, wait a second. This chilazon is brownish, whitish, sandish, whatever. Where's my blue? I know what the chilazon is. The chilazon's blue. It's like the yam. It's kufa is daim yam. And what's going on with this? You give me this whitish, brownish thing and tell me it's the chilazon. It's a fake. Yeah? How will the pro-camp defend? They're going to either say that sometimes when we say yam, that's referring to the sea bed, the bottom of the sea. And apparently that in Yeshaya it says it refers to the yam and it's referring to the seabed. And Yaakov Kamenetsky says when the Torah says yam, it means the sea bed. And now, once you say that, the color actually matches very well to the seabed. In fact, the chilazon even blends into the seabed. So now, it's not just a random description, it's actually a description that has real meaning. When you try to look for it, it's that thing that blends into the seabed. It looks just like the seabed. And now it's not just, it's very descriptive in an important way. And therefore, that's how they explain. Once again, that's a doichik in a way, because Yam, the pashas of Yam is going to be the ocean. But it's not the worst doichik in the world, it's a little doichik. So, one side says this is a Raya brewer this way, the other side says it's a Raya brewer the other way. So, it's one of those geschmack things. There's another answer that I saw as well. Apparently, the Murex gets some blue-greenish algae sometimes that grows on it and on the bottom of the ocean. Now, that bluish-greenish algae is somewhat similar to the color of the water, and that could also potentially be what it was referring to. That is another possibility. Okay, the second characteristic described in the Gemara is briyasai doime ledog. Its creation is similar to a fish. And I heard some of the anti-camp screaming on this one. And the Gemara calls it a fish. If the Gemara calls it a fish, what do you bring me a snail for? Briyasai doime ledog, I want a fish, and you bring me a snail. What sheikhs? You got the wrong thing. You stopped draining me a cup. So, and how does the pro camp defend against that? The pro camp, there's a bunch of ways to defend. I think this is this is very easy to defend this kasha. First of all, the Gra says anything that lives in the water is called a fish. So the feed the Gra's terminology, that is a fish. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to get there. Yeah, you got it. Don't worry. Number two, does it say it's a fish? Or does it say it's doime ledog? It's comparable to a fish. It doesn't say it's a fish. It's like So how would you say something's comparable to a fish? I don't know. It lives in the water. That's pretty comparable to the fish. So what do you tell me I'm draining you a cup over here? It's doime ledog. Perfect. It's not a fish, but it's like a fish. Third possibility, it doesn't even say that it's like a fish. It says briyasai doime ledog. Its creation is like a fish. How are fish born? From eggs. How are snails born? From eggs. Briyasai doime ledog. Its creation is similar to a fish. And that's exactly what it is. Don't start telling me it's a big problem that it's not a fish. I think the pro camp wins on this argument over here. But they both, once again, Raya Brewers, that the other side is wrong. And that their side is right. Okay. Next. The third...
The Rambam says Mefurish it's a fish.
Yeah, I'm getting it. As does Taisus. But first I get the Gemaras, then we get the Rishonim. Now, the fine. Okay, next. Oh, and there's another answer that they give, which I didn't really understand. Maybe somebody else. Somebody wanted to say a sideways snail is like the shape of a fish, somehow. If that works for you, great. Fine. Next. But I like the other answers were better, so whatever. Okay, the third characteristic is that it comes up once in 70 years. So the anti-camp is going to go for the attack. It comes up once in 70 years. Do you ever see the Murex come up every 70 years and come say, surprise, I'm here? I don't see the Murex doing that. So you got the wrong thing. The pro camp is going to say, hey, wait, you've been tracking the Murex for the last 70 years and you know exactly what it's been doing and not, I thought you never heard of this thing 2 minutes ago. And you've been tracking it the last 70 years to know if it shows up. And secondly, the Rabaz says it no longer shows up once every 70 years. That's not how it works anymore. So therefore, that's not a problem. The anti-camp asks, but wait a second. If it's supposed to come up once every 70 years, this stuff you get it whenever you want. So it's obviously not the right thing. The chilazon of the Gemara is something that shows up once every 70 years. This you get it whenever you want. So it's obviously not the right thing. Pro camp, no. It comes up once every 70 years. Within that time, flip on your scuba gear and go get it. So just because it doesn't come up doesn't mean you can't get it. Fine.
It also says it goes up to the mountain.
Right, that's a different Gemara in Sanhedrin, yeah. So
Megillah and Sanhedrin, two words that say mountain. That's harder.
That is harder. Correct. There's
Right.
yeah. The question is
It doesn't fit.
whether that those Gemaras are referring to the chilazon of Techeiles or not, and there's some debate in the Rishonim about that. Fine. Next we go. So we see in multiple places in Chazal, people were chilazon trappers, right? There were different Amoraim bumped into, or Tanoim bumped into somebody. What do? I'm a chilazon trapper. Or Nebuzaran left in Eretz Yisrael, chilazon trappers. Now, if it's something that, as the anti-cap is claiming, it's only possible to get once every 70 years, that's a pretty weird business to do. A funny line to go in for a living. I work once every 70 years, and then I'm off for the next 69. It doesn't sound so right. Fine, tzarchim. The anti-camp says, if you see Rashi explains, it's oila min haaretz. Right? When it says it's oila, it comes out once every 70 years. Rashi explains it comes out from the ground. So what do they say? See, the chilazon you find in the ocean. This stuff is oila min haaretz once every 70 years. So you obviously got the wrong thing. The pro-camp says, first of all, two things. First of all, perhaps maybe it does show up out of the ground once every 70 years. I don't know. I haven't been tracking. You guys also haven't been tracking. Maybe it will show up out of the ground once every 70 years. Or, more likely, what does it mean? Which part of the ocean is it in? It's in the seabed. It stays in the bottom part, in the ground part, on the bottom of the ocean. So it comes up from that ground part once every 70 years. The rest of the time, it's in there. So that actually works out very nicely. L'chayr, that kasha is not so much. Fourth characteristic. Ubedamai tzayvin Techeiles. And with its blood, you dye Techeiles. You dye this blue, seemingly. So the anti-camp says, wait a second, this doesn't dye blue. It dyes purple. It's purple, the color of Techeiles. Yeah? And so it's not the right thing. So the pro-camp says, no, but you expose it to the sunlight, and then it does, if you expose it to the sunlight, it goes blue. Anti-camp, does it say anywhere about exposing to the sunlight? Could you find me one Gemara or one Rishon that says anything about exposing to the sunlight? Because I can't find one. This, I think, the anti-camp has the point. This is a solid point. This is a solid point by the anti-camp. Because the natural color of this chilazon seems to be purple, and there is a way of making it blue, and that's the reason why they couldn't figure it out. It doesn't tell anybody. There's no Rishon that says, put it in the sunlight. So this is a kasha. Fine. The anti-camp says, wait, it says it's blood colors Techeiles. The chilazon doesn't have blood. Snails don't have blood. They have some mucus stuff in them, and glands and mucus and whatever else. They don't have blood. Right, the pro-camp's going to answer as you would expect, not such a big deal. Yeah, that liquid inside it is called its blood. That's what we're going to. That's what we call its blood. Whether you want to scientifically call it blood or not, I don't care. We call that blood. That's not such a shayla. Fine. The anti-camp is going to say that Rashi says in some places that the color of Techeiles is Uric. This Murex, it might do purple, it might do blue. It does not do green. Uric classically means green. Now, where's the green in this? That's coming out of the Techeiles? Well, that we could answer with the. First of all, Rashi in itself is very difficult to understand because where do we see that it's we see it's blue in Chazal. We don't see green. So it happens to be, sometimes we see that when Uric can mean yellow. For example, in Nida, we see that the term Uric means yellow. Yellow and green are in the same spectrum. So we see that Uric sometimes means yellow. It happens to be after they dip the wool into the liquid of the Murex dye, they pull it out, it comes out yellow, and then it turns blue. It's very cool if you watch the process. It's almost instant. They pull it out yellow, and then it turns blue. So you could see where Rashi's coming from, that it's Uric. Huh?
You go to purple, then
No, not purple. It goes yellow. There's some liquid. Maybe it turns purple in the middle? I saw a picture of pulling it out, and it turns yellow, and then the top was starting to turn blue, and the bottom was still yellow. And huh? No, the dye was I'm not sure. I'm not positive exactly in the process, but it was yellow. Are we out of time because that clock is broken? Yeah? Okay, so we will continue next week, but that is the explanation of it being yellow, huh? Is there no minion? I'll keep on going. I davened already. Yeah. So I'm going to keep on going. Tell me if there's a minion, and then I'll stop. Okay, so let's keep on going. So the anti-camp will quote the Rambam, who says that the dye is black, or blackish at least. So, first of all, yes. So the Rambam happens to be, it's hard to understand, because once again, I'm not arguing that the Rambam calls it black, but just like I told you before, that Rashi was kind of understand, because the Gemara seems to imply it's blue. And he's saying it's black. So what's going on, it's a little bit hard to understand. Now, during the processing of this dye, apparently, if done in a certain way, it can make a very dark purple, which is blackish, because it's very dark purple. So maybe that's what the Rambam's talking about. Or apparently, if you leave it out, it gets this very, very dark color. So maybe that is what the Rambam is talking about. But once again, when you have different Rishonim that are arguing, is a point in the sugya in general. It's a little not fair to hold the pro-camp to a standard that when there's two Rishonim that are having opposite opinions on something, that you have to work with both of them. You know, is it a fish, is it a snail? These Rishonim say it's a fish, those Rishonim say it's a snail. To say it has to be both is a little hard. But let's keep on going. Now, a possible fifth characteristic, you could either understand it as its own characteristic, or you could understand this as what comes out of the earlier characteristic. It seems to say it's expensive. The simple pshat in the Gemara is, since it only comes up and only shows up once every 70 years, it is expensive. Yeah? So the pro-camp will say that, guess what? The Murex is and always was expensive. So since it is and always was expensive, great, we got that criteria in the Gemara. The anti-camp will argue, the Gemara says it's expensive because it comes up once every 70 years. Now it's not expensive because it comes up once every 70 years. It's expensive because it's expensive, but not because it's coming up once every 70 years. So you're misquoting the Gemara by saying that, by using this expensiveness as a raya. Pro-camp will answer back and say, no. The reason why it's expensive is because it's only easy to get once every 70 years. The other 69 years, you need scuba gear. And since the other 69 years, you need scuba gear to get it, that's why it's very expensive. Meaning it's two sides of the same coin. Once every 70 years, it's easy. 69 out of 70 years, it's hard. And that's pshat in the Gemara, why it's expensive, and therefore that works just well. Okay, let's keep on going. In Devarim Lamed Gimel Yud Tes, it says, discussing Zvulun's Chelek in Eretz Yisrael, where they get, by the shores, next to that same area near Haifa that we were just talking about. It says, Usvaini Tmaini Chol, that you have treasures hidden in the sand. What are treasures hidden in the sand is the pasuk talking about? So the Gemara Megillah Vav Amud Aleph explains that's referring to the chilazon. The chilazon was found in those shores that we were just talking about before, in the chelek of Zvulun. So the pro-camp is going to say, perfect. This murex is found in the sand. It's in the seabed. It's in the sand. That's where you find it. It's mamish. It fulfills the pasuk perfectly. The anti-camp is you can find you can find seashells there. Just because you find it in the sand doesn't prove it's automatically the right thing. So once again, it's a raya, but this raya is not a mukhraktik raya. It's not but it's it's helpful. Okay, let's keep on going through the rayas. Now we're going to go for some rayas of the anti-camp again. So the Gemara in Shabbos Ayin Hey Amud Aleph says you're chayiv on Shabbos for trapping a chilazon. So the anti-camp will ask, wait a second, trapping a snail on Shabbos, you're not chayiv. It's already trapped. Trapping, you're only chayiv when you trap something that could run away. Something that can't go anywhere or goes a half mile an hour, there's no issur trapping it on Shabbos. The pro-camp will defend. First of all, let's wait a second. The Mishnah in Shabbos that discusses that you're not chayiv tzeidah on something that is slow moving. What was the examples? It's talking about a fast animal that is injured or old. an animal that is naturally slow, that's a machlokes with this tzeda. So it's not l'kuliyama. It's a machlokes with your chayiv tzeda on an animal that's naturally slow. Secondly, what's the reason why you pick up a snail, you're not chayiv tzeda? Because it's easy. As the Gemara in Beitza explains, that anything that is Beitza Chav Daled Amud Aleph, that tzeda is something that requires effort. Tachbulos. You need effort, you need a chase. If you need a chase, you need to put an effort, that's chayiv. A snail, you just go, you pick it up. Rabbi say, does it take effort to put on the scuba gear and swim to the bottom of the ocean and grab it? Obviously. So everybody would hold your chayiv tzeda for going to the bottom of the ocean and chopping one of these guys. These guys aren't easy to catch. Maybe if you grab it out of a fish tank, tzarchim, maybe you won't be chayiv tzeda. But if you go catch it in its normal place to be caught, then you would be chayiv tzeda. So therefore, that's not a good kasha. L'chayra. The defense is quite strong. The Rambam says that it is a fish. Tosfos says it is a fish. The Murex isn't a fish. You're arguing on Rishonim. Who do these guys think they are to argue on Rishonim? Pro Camp will defend and say, first thing is the Gra says anything that lives in the water, that you find in the water, that lives in the water, that's called a dog. So it is a dog. Secondly, you get it. You can't. There's a machlekes rishonim. L'maisa, there's the Rashi, the Ritva, the Aruch. They all say it's either a worm or a snail. If it's a worm or a snail, according to them, so it's not a fish. So when you have a machlekes rishonim and they are contradicting each other or arguing, you can't hold me to the standard of expecting to be saying two things that are contradictory at the same time. And if you are going to hold me on the standard that I need to fit in both with the Rashi, Ritva, Aruch, and the Rambam, if you're going to hold me to that standard, then Rabbi say, guess what? I just found it. I found the item. I found something that we could call a fish while being a snail. I did your impossible standard, if that's what you want from me. And therefore, it would count. Let's give one more, and I think we got end time-wise is what it looks like. But we have plenty more coming next week. But one or two more. Let's go for it. So the anti-camp will say there's a Gemara in Shabbos Chav Chesem Avez that says that regarding the production of tefillin and mezuzos is a klal lo yihochshem meleches shemayim ela min hamuter b'fichach. You're only allowed to use for the production of tefillin, mezuzos, stuff like that, kosher animals. How can you make the techeiles with this non-kosher snail? Everybody agrees the Murex isn't kosher. So the pro camp will defend and say the whole question is a non-starter. It's based on a false premise. First of all, nowhere does it say the chilazon needs to be kosher. Second of all, it's mashma in tons of rishonim that it's not kosher, because all the rishonim that you refer to it as a worm or a snail, so worms and snails aren't kosher. Third of all, as the Noidim Yehuda and Chassam Sefer both say, that clause only when it's the thing that you're using for the mitzvah. The cloth or something like that you're actually using for the mitzvah. Over here, the dye that you're using from the chilazon is not. The dye isn't the mitzvah. You're using it to dye the wool. The wool's the mitzvah. The strings are the mitzvah. This dyes the strings, but it's not the mitzvah itself. And therefore, there's a fundamental difference. And therefore, the iser, or the klal, of not using something not kosher certainly wouldn't apply. So once again, I think that question was not very strong. Okay. Another raya, by the way, it's something I probably should have said earlier, but I left out, that the term chilazon in many languages means a snail. So this Murex sounds pretty good. We're talking about in Hebrew, in Aramaic, in Arabic, and in Old French. In all those languages, the word chilazon means snail. So if the word chilazon means snail, so it's very likely it's a snail, don't you think? So the chayra that doesn't prove Murex specifically, but it proves the snail family in general. And the anti-camp will say, I don't care what they the Arabs say, and I don't care what the old French say. It doesn't prove to me what my Techeiles is, what my chilazon is. My chilazon is what the Rambam says, not what some old French guy says. So that's what they would defend. Okay, so that is the basic rayas about Murex, whether it is or isn't. We are going to go further next week, and we're going to discuss the general concept of Techeiles as a whole, and we're going to get through what the Paiskim say and what the Anhaga really should be. Halach l'maisa. Thank you for listening.